That's right. Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And welcome to the very prolonged and drawn out fifth installment of the Great Disney Rankings podcast. That's right, Dragon. You know what? We could probably just crack this out like as a top 20, but you know what? We've come this far. We've done all these all these different top 10 parts, so let's just go ahead and chug along. Dragon, this is where the metal meets the road as far as making the hard cuts. Like what's going to be in the top, because it's already an honor to be in the top 20 as far as I'm concerned. Like as far as I'm concerned, each and every one of these films that we're going to be talking about are like some of Disney's best. But the question is, what is going to make the top 10 and what won't? Dragon, I can already tell you there is one thing in particular on your list that I was shocked to not make the top 10.
I think I know what you're talking about, and it kind of entered a lot, kind of.
Which one do you think I'm talking about?
I'm not going to tell you now.
Okay. I'm curious. I'm curious if we're thinking of the same one.
Oh, it's one of two movies, Tiki, that you're thinking I should have put in the top 10. I know that.
Okay. All right. Well, Dragon, any kind of like last minute sort of thesis for this selection, or should we just dive right in?
Well, I mean, this in general, this is kind of reason I'm starting to hate these lists, because you get to the top 20, and it's like, now I have guilt thanks to
That's
Mr.
Challenge,
Wish.
That's exactly why I love the list. I love the challenge of it.
Right, because we have to arbitrarily put everything in a place to give it a rank and place judgment on it, because that's what society demands, apparently, because we can't just have nice things and just say,
You're
I
damn
like
straight.
these.
Have you lived on the internet? All right. Well, I personally really like this exercise as much as my co-host is kind of not really digging the how arbitrary it is, but I don't think it's arbitrary, Dragon. I really do think that it's a very interesting list as far as like, kind of like deciding personal preferences. And
I have 60 reasons to feel guilty, so I hope you're happy.
Fair enough. All right. Theme Park Priest, you're listing off a bunch of stuff. Oh, okay. 100. Theme Park Priest, I'll get to your list soon. But welcome. And yes, we are getting to the best movies. So speaking of which, let's just dive right into this thing, Dragon. Let's see. My number 20 is one that has already been discussed. I don't really think we need to spend too much more time on it. It's Lady and the Tramp. This was on your, I believe this made your top 25 or so, right? Like roughly?
Oh, roughly, yeah.
So we're not very far off on this one. The best way I can describe Lady and the Tramp is, for what is essentially just a cute dog movie, it's essentially like the best of the best when it comes to cute dog movies. I do think that the stakes in this movie are surprisingly a bit harder, a bit higher.
Well, actually, it was 32 for me.
Oh, okay. Well, my bad.
Yeah.
Well, still, I think this movie definitely has some surprisingly high stakes. I love the fact that it's like the first modern day Disney movie, and now it's kind of like a time capsule of the 1950s. I just find all that neat. I find because of the 1950s vibe, I kind of associate this a lot with like the vibes of Disneyland in the 1950s, even though the two really don't have a lot in common with each other. And overall, not a ton to say about this one. Tramp is a great leading character, one of the arguably one of the best romances that Disney's ever put to screen. Certainly the most iconic romance scene with the spaghetti. So just a nice simple one to kick things off. I can't really put it much higher than this, but it did definitely surprise me on a rewatch with how rich and enjoyable and thematic it was. All right. Let's see. So Z&K is in the chat. He says, you never feel bad about your own opinions until you hear someone else's thoughts about your thoughts.
Yep, like this guy, mister. I'm surprised it wasn't on your list.
Nothing common with Lady and the Tramp, but Disneyland, not like the same birth year. Well, yeah, it's interesting, Z&K, because it's like there's not a lot in common, like, thematically between the two, but I certainly see a lot of like the kind of like the Americana influence of 1955 Disneyland in here. So it does definitely have some DNA. Okay, so with that, Dragon, let's just go right along. What's your number 20?
All right, my number 20 is Princess and the Frog. This
Okay.
one kind of teetered on being the top spot of the last list, but it was kind of I don't know, it was kind of a toss up. So yes. So again, very much the Princess and the Frog is an important film. It was the big comeback and revitalization of 2D animation. At least we thought. Unfortunately, 2D animation didn't quite
I think
stick
James
around.
Cameron had other plans.
Well, yeah, it was James Cameron though, but yes, James, the old Jimmy Cameron. That Jimmy Cameron. Regardless, so 2D didn't quite
What
stick
if
around.
Disney was just like, "Hey guys, we're gonna that 2D project that we talked about, it's releasing this year, 1 week before Avatar 2." All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, the point is, the 2D animation didn't quite stick around, but again, it sounds like we're making a comeback again. So it's kind of a small world, how that works. Anyway, so if I believe it's Musker and Clemens who did this one, right? Yeah, so Musker and Clemens, they're making their triumphant return. So again, it's basically like we're getting the band back together for kind of the way things used to be back during the Renaissance, which just kind of had a special feeling about it. I mean, when I think Princess of the Frog, there are two things that always kind of strike the chords with me here. Where one, Tiana's story. It's very relatable. I think possibly, you root for her possibly more than any of the other Disney leads that we've had, quite possibly. I mean, Tiana's like, you're really investing.
At the very least, any of the Disney princesses that we've had.
Easily, yeah, with the princesses, for sure. So the bare minimum, yeah. So,
besides one that I'll get to, from my personal standpoint.
Okay. So, I love, later on, I think one of those pivotal scenes in the film, this crosses over to my other point. It's like, I love how with the through line with Tiana, we set up what she wants at the top of the film with, we see the flashback to her childhood and just kind of her working for it to Dr. Facilier presenting, everything she wants on a silver platter, essentially, and the temptation that's there. And then what chilled me to the bone all the right ways was when he showed her how her father suffered, but he put on a brave face for her when he came home, which inspired her. That's what I'm saying. I love how we tied her through lines together between the hero and the villain of the story. And speaking of which, the other element I take away from most with Princess and the Frog is Keith David as Dr. Facilier. Just utterly one of the great.
Yeah, wonderful design and presence. I just wish he had a little bit more to do.
That's true, but he's, it's kind of the line between voodoo and full-on sorcery, which we could already have a sorcerer guy with kind of a snake cane, and we can't really do too much with that. But and of course, one of the great villain songs that I've got friends on the other side. I love that. Randy Newman very much feeling his New Orleans oats with his New Orleans roots and his oats with this film.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, the worst I can say about Princess of the Frog is that it drags a little when we get to the swamp. It's that, and it's also, again, this to me was kind of like the invention of the the whole let's transform the character subversion thing that now has become a little commonplace. Not saying it doesn't work, but it's just the fact when we keep doing the hat trick too many times,
it really didn't work for me in Soul.
All right, I get it. You didn't like it in Soul. All right.
All right.
If I could pick and choose, I'd pick Soul, and maybe I'd not pick something else. But we can't have that, can we? No. Anyway,
to be fair, if it wasn't in Brave, then I feel like Soul would have landed a little bit better, but I digress.
Yeah, so let's just hold it against Soul because it's like the first time.
Oh, I do hold it against Soul.
Ah.
All right, anyways.
Last list I do with you.
It is literally like the first African-American Pixar protagonist, and he's a cat for like half the movie. All right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it's a sweet story, I think it ends just right, though. And of course, obviously, Jim Cummings as Ray, just beautiful performance, and obviously a very, very horrific death.
Okay. Yeah, and I feel like I've said this before, but we are like some of the only people on the internet that actually like Ray. Like, for some reason, the internet really finds him annoying, and I'm like, for real, dudes?
You got to stop looking all over the internet for these sort of things.
I'm just shocked that there's a subset of people who find him annoying. He's like the heart of the film for me. Alrighty, so let's see. Let's get on to number 19. This is going to be a big cut, Dragon. This is going to be a big cut. It's like a band-aid rip, all right? It's Pinocchio.
What?
Yeah, it's Pinocchio. Um, and this is this low, honestly, primarily because of Jiminy Cricket. I rewatching this movie. I don't know, like I get Jiminy Cricket's role, but he just seems like a very dated character. He's very much a nag. He kind of is a Debbie Downer. I
It's a
know that's
movie
his
from the
role.
40s. What do you want from it? Dated?
And I am saying that it has not aged particularly well in regards to the main character. The main character just feels a little dated, is all. Um, obviously, like the animation in this is incredible, the set pieces and everything. One of the most artistically ambitious films that Disney's ever done. But as far as like the category of like most artistically ambitious that Disney's ever done, this is the one that kind of rings the most hollow for me on a rewatch from a story point of view. I just feel like there's some dated elements of it. The film definitely has a cynical edge, which some people really like, and I appreciate. But by a by a certain token, there's also like a little bit of tone whiplash going on here and there. It's a wonderful film. It's a very artistic, very ambitious film. For me personally, like not only Jiminy Cricket, but also Pinocchio himself. Like Pinocchio himself is like obviously a little bit more he's got the rough edges kind of sanded off of him from the Charlie McCarthy version they were gonna go with. But still, he's a little bit of an idiot. He's a little bit of a jerk, and I get that that's the story. I get it. But honestly, Dragon, I find the Geppetto, Cleo, and Figaro side of things. I find those characters to be a lot more likable. And then I honestly find all the villains in this movie to be a lot more compelling. So that right there is kind of like my big sticky point with Pinocchio. Is like I find everything around Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket to be great. I do not dig Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket as like a Disney kind of like dynamic duo, and they're just a big centerpiece of the movie, and they kind of drag the energy down just a little bit for me personally, just in regards to being dated. So yeah, I'm sorry, this is a shocker, but I the heart wants what the heart wants. You're really not going to be happy about what's above it. I'll tell you that much.
Hmm.
All right. Let's get into the comics, the comments here. So Z&K is very upset. Seriously, this is one of the most beautifully ornated, detailed movies from Walt Disney Animation Studios. It's funny how you think this feels hollow because compared to Pinocchio adaptations, those feel a bit more hollower for the number of reasons we can discuss at another point. I mean, obviously, this is certainly the best Pinocchio adaptation that's come out of Hollywood. Don't get me wrong; I'm not arguing that. Like, yeah, obviously. Like I said, I just the only argument I could give for placing this low is because I love everything else as far as the characters go. I love the villains. I love the Geppetto stuff. Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket. I mean, for one, they're just kind of bickering with each other for most of the movie, so it doesn't even really make for that fun of a dynamic. I don't know. It's just those two little elements. It's like we're getting to a point with these rankings where just the smallest little things can drag a movie down. All right. So, Dragon, with that in mind, and like I said, you guys are really not going to like my number 18. What's your number 19,
I just want to
Dragon?
remind folks, lynch him, don't lynch me. All right, so number 19, The Lion King.
All right. Well, you see, folks, boo. The Lion King should be higher. Boo. No, I'm kidding.
Anyway. So Lion King, one of the '90s nostalgic icons for Disney, most assuredly. Obviously the most successful of the bunch. Very much it's Hamlet with lions. It's kind of like It's kind of funny when you look back in Lion King. It's like let's take kind of like some early beginnings of Disney with kind of your animal basically the animal movies in which we didn't really anthropomorphize the animals, but they were allowed to talk and everything, like in Aristocats or A Lady and the Tramp, if you will, and then kind of like sprinkle a little bit like, okay, what if we add kind of the old folklore kind of folklore like history and kind of like literature of like Robin Hood, for example. You kind of mix it in the pot, you end up with something like Lion King, but we've kind of gone big scale and we've upped the animation to the highest caliber we possibly could, and it looks amazing. And honestly, it's kind of like the ultimate answer to like how do you get kids into Shakespeare? Which you need like a like a cipher to the cipher. Honestly, with Shakespeare, sometimes like what the heck are they saying? It's like another
Uh-huh.
language. I need an interpreter. Someone with hand puppets. Somebody. Anyway, so I love the arc on Simba. I always have. I just love, the arc is really great and very much it's a son becomes the father story, which of course worked very well for Superman Last to Check. So I like that we're applying it in kind of our Hamlet kind of tale, which also fits. The color, the animation, flawless. For me, honestly, with Lion King, the reason it's definitely not like in the, definitely not in the top 10 and definitely not kind of like in the top 15 is that Lion King does suffer a little bit from kind of like an overrated sort of thing, in which Lion King is a good movie. It is, and it's good, and it's the way animated films should look, and it's all great and all. But it's not exactly a film. I was never on like I was never wrapped up in the Lion King love fest. It was like, oh, it was a good movie. All right, yay for Disney, big success. But the thing that always held it back for me, ultimately, as a kid and still today, looking back on it, I hated the love story. I hated mainly the reunion between Nala and Simba. Never liked it. It's, I
I'm
mean, it's
kind of in your corner there.
it's minor, but it's very persistently just not hitting the marks for me at all. It's a persistently a mark
I honestly think
against
I
the
don't
film.
really vibe with Matthew Broderick's Simba just in general.
I mean, it's that. I always hated like the whole like "Can you feel the love tonight" song. I always killed the momentum of the movie. It's like okay, like hey Simba, we got trouble, love
Right, right,
story,
right.
and then and then like okay, then there's Timon and Pumbaa. They're kind of out their buddy, and like okay,
Okay, you've got to admit the Timon and Pumbaa parts of that song are easily the best.
oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. What is that saying about the song though?
No, right, right.
So the point being, obviously, there's a whole lot to love with the Lion King between Scar and James Earl Jones and the greats and everything. But that's the thing though. It's a lot of great stuff, but just still, I mean, I don't know. I think the other stuff just kind of like stands out to me. Just a little bit more. And Lion King was just kind of like another like it's like what the consistency should be on Disney on the regular. It's kind of like a gold standard, but like like the price of gold has gone down in years.
Okay, Dragon, I'm terribly sorry. I have like a bad cough for some reason, so please bear with me there, folks.
Mm.
So number 18 for me, it's only number 18 because of the historical significance, the atmosphere, the animation, the strength of the villain. So basically what I'm saying is literally everything else except for the main characters. Number 18 to me, I'm going to get in so much trouble for this. The Black Cauldron. Yeah, this is probably like, my most overrated on my list personally. Here's the thing with the Black Cauldron for me. I walked into it with very little expectations outside of like, oh, this will be a fascinating little historical relic. And I came out kind of loving it. I really did. One thing I think the Black Cauldron works really well as is basically like a fall/Halloween movie. If you watch it in that context, it can really sing. It does kind of feel like it has all those sort of vibes. Obviously, with the Black Cauldron, the thing we have to address is the main character is a tool, and he's not fun at all, and he's kind of miserable to be around. That's all said and good. I totally agree with it. Taran is just insufferable. That being said, I feel like every other character besides Taran is at the very least like manageable. People give Gurgi a lot of shit, but I'll defend Gurgi. I think Gurgi is kind of like he's not nearly as bad as like a Jar Jar Binks or something. I think he's just kind of like a pretty typical Disney sidekick who actually has a pretty powerful like sacrificial arc at the end of the movie. And they actually do like some pretty creative stuff to get him back. And it's not just like oh, Gurgi's dead. Never mind. He's not. He's fine.
Are you sure it's not like that though?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure it's like I'm pretty sure it kind of The closest I would compare it to is like the Meg stuff, where he dies like right before the final confrontation, and then after the final confrontation, they bring him back to life.
Yeah, but wasn't that involved the process to bring him back, or like so they did bring him back though? It wasn't just like he just happened to be alive.
There was a process, yeah. There was
Okay,
definitely a process.
Okay, so they used like probably most. I'm assuming the Black Cauldron itself to bring him back, right?
Or something like that, yeah.
Okay.
But the thing that I really need to highlight here, the Horn King, Jesus Christ, John Hurt, just the visuals, the voice, just the presence of him. Every time the Horn King is on screen is just absolutely magnificent Disney storytelling. That, and I cannot get enough of the Horn King's lair. I think it's easily one of the best, most creative, most striking locations in any Disney movie. And you know what? I also kind of like the side characters. I like the one random dude who's just kind of like the songwriter type who's just along for the ride. I do kind of like the princess, just on the basis where my theory is that she's not really a princess. She's just kind of calling herself a princess because she's like trying to cope with the trauma of being kidnapped. That's my personal theory with it, at least. And I think that adds a little bit of layer to her character. But yeah, I mean, I just think the Black Cauldron is just truly a very staggering movie from an artistic point of view. And I think it's probably the very last Disney movie that got made more for an eye for artistic ambition than an eye for storytelling. And that is a very unique thing to me, and I still very much appreciate it. And like I said, the fact that it's kind of like a Halloween staple, I can get behind it a lot, man. Like, I can see myself revisiting this every year for Halloween just because of how dark and creepy and ominous it is. It's got that vibe. So I certainly think it's one of the more underrated in the Disney canon for sure. I think people just look at the production nightmare side of things with this, and they don't ever actually give the film itself a chance. So give it a chance, people. Taron is going to be a terrible main character, but everything else about the movie is pretty decent. Let's see. Have you two ever caught the one brief part of the movie that got reanimated for some reason? Black Cauldron, I'm assuming? Not sure. I don't think so. The Black Cauldron, my number 48, very different. And then I can't say I was disgusted when I was expecting this, says Z and K. All right, so yeah, that's one of my controversial things off the list. Dragon, what's your number 18?
Okay, number 18. All right, so number 18, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Okay. Mine's my ranking of Snow White's going to be pretty close. So actually, my Snow White's number 15, so we're pretty close on the money with that.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, look, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's the rock that literally built the Disney church, and that literally, after, if I recall, like I don't remember when did they get the Snow White statues. It wasn't when the studio was originally built. They had those statues because the studio was built from the money from Snow White, or am I misremembering that?
Well, I know it was like the second studio they had, the Burbank studio. I'm not exactly sure when that was as far as the timeline goes.
Well, no, I'm just saying, if I recall, like the original Disney studio was bought with the money from Snow White, so I guess they didn't have the statue.
That sounds right, yeah.
So when they had the second studio, that's when they had like, hey, let's have the dwarves holding up the building.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, you want us. The point being, Snow White, very important, literally build the Disney studio. So, Disney's folly, all that, the gamble paid off. It's possibly the most famous, fairy tale, adaptation, ever, possibly. I mean, again, it's a very big place of importance, when it happened, and obviously it was like the animated film, won the honorary Oscar with the little 7 little ones behind it, which is adorable. I love it. You gotta wonder how many specialty Oscars have they ever made like that. I'm thinking not.
Okay,
not any.
I'm gonna throw you a fact about the specialty Oscars that's gonna blow your mind. All right,
what is it?
Walt was actually really insulted by them.
Oh, I remember he didn't. I never wasn't crazy about the Shirley Temple thing, but like, really, he was that insulted by it?
No, like the Shirley Temple thing, he was like just trying to act as good as he could with the whole "I'm so happy, I think I'll bust." It's like, no, he was insulted because he fully thought that Dragon, it was basically like a best popular film Oscar. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
he was insulted that it didn't even get considered for like the proper Best Picture award.
Yeah. So with Snow White, it's that you feel every second of effort on the screen, which is
Oh,
impressive. You
absolutely.
see the building blocks of animation unfold before your eyes. So historically, I cannot deny the place of importance. Hence why it's kind of like it's getting up there in the list compared to where everything else is now. I mean, the story is bare bones, but with a flavor to it. So, while there's not a whole lot going on, what we do have going on is again, it's kind of Snow White is kind of the divining rod for the story. She's more of a kind of a fixture of the plot than she is really like a well fleshed out character. That said, that doesn't mean
I feel like literally everyone except for Grumpy of all people is that.
Well, what I'm getting at is that we kind of
Grumpy is like the only person in this movie that actually has an arc.
Yeah. So what I'm getting at is Snow White is kind of like the she's the event that brings them together, and she by her being there, it allows us to kind of like explore the dwarves as characters and kind of like build like, okay, we the audience care about her by proxy of the dwarves are going to care about her. So like Snow White being kind of our in for that side of things. It's about the relationship between between the her and the dwarves, which bases the relationship between us the audience and the girl, which is why we care about her when she eats the poison apple. So, and ultimately, there's a lot of great lessons in storytelling in Snow White, which I always appreciate. Grumpy, that scene where Grumpy's crying over the dead, the seemingly dead Snow White. That tells you everything you need to know about the film right there.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, now I gotta admit though, usually when you look back on something, honestly, the main reason it's not higher on the list is that if I were objectively ranking them, maybe might be top 10 material if I was fully objective, like saying the place of historical importance, Snow White. It's how do you beat that? But it's like.
But if you were subjectively rating them, it probably wouldn't even be this high, right?
Well, that's the thing. This is kind of like a
I
middle
feel
ground
you.
subjective and the thing where it's like I don't really go back to Snow White all that often. I do like the dwarves when they pop up, and I do like the movie when I sit down to watch it. But I'm not.
If I go back to it, it's usually just for like the animation historical context of it all. It's
that's
not
the thing.
To visit the characters.
Yeah, if anything, I'm going back to watch Grumpy scenes. Outside of that, it's.
Oh, Grumpy, you do care.
That's what I'm saying. If I'm looking, look how Farmiga-esque she is in that scene. Look at her.
Oh my god!
But beyond that, let's see. What was it? All right. So the other thing, though, with Snow White is that they really lucked out at the end. With like, man, they're really lucky that that prince, kissed her goodbye. Otherwise, that movie would not have a happy ending. They got really lucky. Like, was she in the glass? Remind me, she was in the glass coffin, right? Like, there was like a lid to that coffin. Am I right? They're lucky, man. They're lucky. This prince has kind of a weird thing going on. He had to kiss her goodbye so badly, he had to remove the lid.
Oh my god!
Glass coffin. Like, there's something creepy about that when you really think about it.
All right.
It's like he had to kiss the corpse. What's wrong with this guy?
He's just necrophiliac. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Anyways,
there's always one around the block.
Jokes. Yeah.
There's always one around the block.
Ain't that true?
Yeah.
Okay, Z and K says, by the way, for anyone curious, it's the oh wait, hold on. He says, at least Snow White was getting that award isn't as insulting as it was for Justice League to win fan favorite film at the Oscars this year.
Also, apparently, that flash scene getting like the moment thing was rigged. Apparently, that's what the word on the street is. That someone rigged like the voting system. So,
well, yeah, it's the Snyder fans, Dragon. They're a militia unto themselves.
That's just terrifying. They're all those aggro fans, just like yeah.
Okay, and he also says, at least that short-lived Snow White musical at Disneyland tried to flesh out the relationship more. Did it? I never actually got around to seeing that, but that's cool. Okay, yeah, so let's see. For me, my number 17 is going to be Wreck-It Ralph. I'm going to wreck it. All right. So, Dragon, for a long time, this movie suffered in my personal rankings because of expectations. And you and I have talked about this, where, they basically advertised this movie as like a globe hopping movie, except instead of going to locations around the globe, we'd be going to different video games. And the movie is basically that for the first act, and then it settles down in Sugar Rush. And so the first time I saw this movie, I was very much like, yeah, the Sugar Rush stuff is good, but like I wish we went to a few more locations. Like I was really hyped up for the kind of like the journey element of it. So that being said, revisiting Wreck-It Ralph years later, and yeah, I mean, there's a reason why this movie is as beloved as it is. And that reason is honestly mostly the Vanellope and Ralph stuff. I mean, my God, Dragon, what a great dynamic duo for a Disney franchise, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Vanellope is just absolutely the heart of the Wreck-It Ralph franchise, as far as I'm concerned. I love the emphasis they give her as a glitch in this movie. I actually think that part of her character was a little glossed over in Ralph Breaks the Internet. The King Candy thing is, I will admit King Candy as a villain is just kind of like, I'm not sure how I feel about him. Like, I like him better than the typical twist villains, like, like a Hans or a Mayor Bellwether or whatever. But I do think that he is a little bit too over the top and cartoony to really be taken as a genuine threat until the very end transformation, at least, of course. But that's more just the imagery. But yeah, obviously, I think the big standout scene here is the scene where Ralph wrecks Vanellope's car. That scene is going to like go down as like one of the most heartbreaking Disney moments. That's not a death.
he wrecked the. It's like the equivalent of the Razor Crested Mando.
Right.
It's the cookie version
obviously,
of the Razor
Fix-It
Crest.
Felix is a wonderful addition to this cast. I wish he had more to do in the sequel. I love him. All the stuff with Calhoun is great. The reoccurring joke about how her husband died on her wedding day is like deliciously dark for a Disney movie. Honestly, it's the video game cameos that kind of like just get watched in the background when I rewatch this movie. And that's probably for the best, because even though people were kind of like going into this thing expecting like essentially the Roger Rabbit of video game movies, this is not that. But I think the actual quality of the film is all the better for it. We have stuff like Cuber and and Tapper. I love Tapper, by the way. Tapper is easily my favorite video game reference in this movie.
Yeah,
I
me
just
too.
love how
I really
he and
like
Ralph just have this really friendly dynamic with each other. But yeah, I don't know. I really feel like going back and rewatching this one, it really makes it sing. It's not exactly the movie that they were advertising or the movie I expected, but the movie we got is still pretty damn terrific and genuinely some of the best character work in any of these movies, I think. And the only reason it's 17 is because, frankly, we're getting into a lot of competition. So it's like I put it up as high as I could.
For sure.
All right, let's see. ZK says again, one of the best cast Disney movies ever. Let's see. Just giving the guy who directed March versus the Monorail and Cape Fear gives you so much of a different Disney flavor. And I actually did not know that Wreck-It Ralph was directed by a Simpsons guy, and those are two fantastic episodes. That's really cool.
Well, yeah, they get a lot of there's Disney and Pixar honestly have gotten a lot of Simpsons talent over the years, technically. Because
obviously Brad Bird is the big one. I know. Yeah,
I don't know if Mark Andrews also was on Simpsons or not, but yeah.
Okay, so moving right along, Dragon. What's your number 17?
Yeah, Rich Moore, exactly. Yeah, Rich. Yeah. Yeah. Also, I remember Rich Moore mainly from Futurama. I believe he did Futurama and Simpsons, but it could be anyway. So, So number 17. This is one I kind of wish I could have ranked higher, but there's some reasons that I couldn't like necessarily put it over others. The Jungle Book.
Okay, yeah, this was actually kind of like a little bit lower than I was expecting on my list, but what say you about it?
Well, here's the thing. So I could be really glowing about the Jungle Book, and that's one of Disney's finest. It's not it's not like gloriously animated as say the lengths of which we go with something like The Lion King, but the animation that we have, it's polished.
Or like some of the earlier Walt era stuff, like Bambi and Fantasia.
Yeah, exactly. Now, here's the thing, though. What Jungle Book compensates for in the best of ways, though, is it has some of Disney's, still to this day, some of Disney's finest character animation.
It does.
That's the thing where it's not exactly the
I
flourish
also
and the
dig the
polish.
backgrounds too.
I think the backgrounds are good, but that's what I'm saying. It's not like Pinocchio, where we have like the amazing like cage scene, where, like like we're not exactly reinventing the wheel on things, but we're putting all that effort into the character animation to convey the story. Which again, the story lives and dies by its characters.
Mhm.
So so that's the thing. So the again, I just love that the animals are so human here. I love we have this. It's a very grounding element. With them kind of like taking care of Mowgli and kind of the jungle adopting the boy as one of their own, and Mowgli's kind of the totem for the young audience, and like every kid just kind of like who's ever had like been to a zoo can very much put themselves in the shoes or the bare feet of Mowgli. And ultimately, it's then really interestingly kind of like this kid facing the reality of he can't live in the fantasy world forever. He's going to have to go to man's world.
Yeah, it does have a pretty potent message in that regard.
Yeah, and obviously the Sherman Brothers music beyond compare. It's really great in the Jungle Book, possibly some of their best.
Mhm.
A lot of competition, mind you, but some of their best. George Sanders. Oh my God, I love Shere Khan so much in this movie because one George Sanders.
I love how they build him up too. It's like a great.
Yeah.
I think it's probably like the best example Disney's ever done of a build up villain.
I was just rewatching a little bit of it today, and just like George Sanders in the scene with Ka is just so good. Where he's kind of figuring him out. He knows that Ka's putting him on, but he can't quite prove it in the moment. It's just like George Sanders. Obviously, the big scene, when Mowgli comes there, and Mowgli's just kind of taunting him. It was like the audience, like, "Run, Mowgli, you idiot, run!"
Yeah.
And just like, "I'll give you to the count of 10." It's just the fact that just George Sanders bringing kind of that Bond villain kind of mystique to
Uh-huh.
this character, and just guys, George Sanders just was utterly wonderful. Everyone, obviously, Phil Harris as well. Everyone,
Sebastian Cabot.
yeah, oh yeah, Sebastian Cabot especially, yes.
Of course, Louis Prima.
That's what I'm saying. All the characters were really great. Honestly, it's gonna be weird. It's like there's kind of like a richness in the sound design for how the dialogue sounds. It has like
No,
that
there
60s.
is for sure.
It's like how they talk about how they record the old Disney sound effects. It's kind of like that with like the recording of the mics. It just has that 60s echo that you kind of like.
I feel you. I feel
Now,
you.
the only knocks I really have against the Jungle Book are, I mean, honestly, if I look back on and being really honest, the elephant stuff, yeah, I don't think, yeah, didn't
That
really
was the big drag for me too.
I remember as a kid liking him. I went back to it, was like, yeah, I mean, it's okay, but do we really need it? And then that kind of
I
feeds
feel
into
like
the
as a
main,
kid you like it because it's like, oh, Mowgli's got an elephant friend, and I'm
yeah,
a kid, and you know what I mean. It's like you relate to the kid element of it.
yeah. And then years later, guitars, and I'm like, oh, there's a better elephant friend. All right.
Right, right.
So, but honestly, that kind of bleeds into the main issue I have with the Jungle Book. Looking back on it a little critically, is that there is. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but if I were like kind of looking at it like a little viewfinder or something, is that there's like a very vignetted vibe to the story.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that does really show when you look at it. Where basically it's like, okay, they have the Shere Khan story, which is important, and then we have, much as I love that Louis Prima scene, and I do, and I'm not saying we lose it. It kind of goes on for a bit. We're like, yeah, it may spend a little bit too much time in our
If it
song.
wasn't Louis Prima, it would be
Yeah,
too much screen time. I agree.
exactly. If it were not Louis
But
Prima,
since
it
it
would
is
not.
Louis Prima,
Yeah,
I will give it all the screen time it needs.
I love me some. I'm already a Louis Prima fan, so the fact
Yeah,
that
so am I. Yeah.
that's the thing. So I mean, ultimately, it's like that, and like we have stuff like the Vulture Gang, which ultimately, again, it's so funny. You can praise Jon Favreau for the Jungle Book, but just do the opposite with the Lion King because Jon Favreau made some debatably good cuts with
He
the
did.
Jungle
He
Book.
did.
That's the thing. He made like a legit, like, okay, well, here's another way you could approach this story, and yeah, that's the same thing with the ending. The ending is bittersweet, and I like the bittersweet ending, but I also really love the Jon Favreau. And there's like, oh, they're all together in the jungle, isn't that nice?
Mhm.
So so anyways, that's a shame because there was such great momentum in the story and the dread and everything of like, oh god, the boy's going to go up against Shere Khan, but those little interruptions. That's why it gets down to 17. That's like I maybe would have put it at 15, but I don't know.
All right. Okay, so this is my number 16. I like, you're actually probably going to be surprised this isn't in my top 10, Dragon, because I praise this film pretty consistently. It's not Alice in Wonderland.
Hmm.
And honestly, the reason why is because on a rewatch, I could tell, like, yeah, this film is a mess from a narrative point of view. Like, obviously, it's not trying to be a big narrative movie. That's not the point of Alice, but yeah, it's very all over the place. It's very vignette-y. That being said, I mean, I absolutely adore the color design in this movie, the Mary Blair look. I think visually it's one of the best looking Disney movies they've ever done, at least in, as far as color palette and backgrounds and stuff goes. It's just, yeah, the plot is really all over the place, really messy. So really, Dragon, this is this side mostly for sentimental reasons. I do know that Walt himself hated this movie, like to the point where it was probably like maybe beyond something like Sword in the Stone, probably the movie in his career he was the most apathetic towards. It was one of those things where it's like, Walt Disney simply has to adapt Alice in Wonderland. And he was like,
well, there's actually a good reason for why he has to, because he got to start with the Alice comedies.
So right.
Like, do you think that's why he didn't like it? Do you think like I would have approached this far
differently? I think the pressure to do it, along with the fact that they spent, like, this movie was in production hell for a long time. Like, it's probably the Walt era movie beyond maybe just Mary Poppins because of the rights issues. Probably one of the Disney movies that was in production hell the longest. And at the end of the day, the final product is very creative, very memorable, very trippy. It doesn't have a lot of heart, though. It really doesn't have a lot of heart. It's a pretty mean-spirited movie, in all honesty. Like, even the characters that you do like the Mad Hatter and March Hare, like, literally turn on Alice by the end of the movie and are, like, chasing her like everyone else. I mean, I really think that's probably, like, for Walt and for me, that's, like, one of the things in this movie that does not jive well, is that it's a very abrasive movie in some ways, just with how cynical it can be. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm mostly just putting this up here because of the strength of the visuals alone, and I feel like the strength of the visuals alone are pretty damn high, my friend. I mean, it's, like, visually this movie looks absolutely impeccable. It's a surrealist masterwork. So yeah, it's just the characters themselves. I think Catherine Belmont, honestly, this is gonna sound mean, but like, her roles as a Disney voice actress are kind of a bit hit or miss for me, because I feel like she's got a very dry delivery a lot of the time. I think the highlights here are probably like the Mad Hatter, the March Hare, Sterling Holloway as the Cheshire Cat, and then obviously Vera Felton as the Queen of Hearts. I feel like those four characters kind of carry the film in some ways. But yeah, overall, just not a, it's certainly a film. It's certainly in the Disney repertoire of films that I will go back and rewatch the most, simply because of the trippy style. But it's definitely one of the coldest Disney movies as far as like actually having an emotional core goes. So yeah, I will admit, Dragon, out of all the stuff in the canon, this might have been one of the hardest ones for me to personally rank. All right. I feel the loose narrative approach is the only way to go with Alice. The only version of Alice that managed to add a narrative that managed to work was the 1999 Hallmark adaptation. That's my second favorite after 51. I played the King of Hearts in a middle school play. Oh, that's hilarious. Theme park priest. Yeah, ZNK, I mean, I feel like I get you as far as like the loose narrative is the only way to go. I get you on that. Again, I think for me, it's more kind of like the mean-spirited vibe of the movie that kind of gets under my skin a little bit, and why I can't place it higher. But again, I mean, it's number 16, and the movie pretty much has no plot. So it's like, I feel like this is appropriate. I wish I could have placed it higher, just because obviously I feel like this is like on a subjective level, it's one of my favorites. But this I rank Alice higher than Tiki. Yeah, I'm not surprised, Priest. So this list is kind of like a mix of subjective and objective. And so because of that, I feel like just it being kind of in the middle of my top 20 is appropriate. All right. It's not chicken levels of mean-spirited. God, no. All right, Dragon, you're number 16.
You're number 16. Dumbo.
Okay. I'm honestly kind of surprised you have this high. If you remember correctly, I was this is kind of like towards the middle of my rankings.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, it was a little higher, and I kind of tempered it back where it's I mean, obviously, Dumbo, one of the Malt's favorites, and for good
I
reason.
feel like that's where your bias comes from on it.
No, no. I
Honestly.
mean, look, I'm just mentioning it because no, no. In all seriousness, though, I mean, look, I was mentioning it because it's kind of fun. Like we know the Malt likes Dumbo.
It is his favorite Disney movie, as far as we know.
I mean, seriously, Dumbo is very memorable, and it's really kind of it's got these. It's one of the best examples of Disney kind of playing with the theme of ostracization. Someone being ostracized, for how they look and everything. With Dumbo is very much being the outcast because how it looked when he was born. Um, I don't know. I love the Dumbo is it's bare bones in the best of ways. It's a short, simple story. It's like barely an hour. Well, it's like roughly an hour. um, it's like an hour and 2 minutes or however, like hour 4 minutes, whatever you want to kind of cut that off at. Um, I don't know. It's just there's simplicity there, like very straight through line. Baby with big ears, mother gets separated from, and he kind of finds he kind of basically he finds kind of a silver lining of sorts, and like kind of the message of the movie is it's sometimes you can't really sorry let me rethink that thought here. Anyway, regardless, so like the moral story just being like you kind of like in finding the silver lining, it's like you kind of found a way to turn kind of a grievance into kind of a gift, one could say. It's I don't know. There's just I don't know, some kind of like a purity to Dumbo, and the fact of like how it was cracked out too. The fact Disney was going through some radical things at that time, and just kind of like cracked it out. Literally, was it like right before World War II, or like right during Pearl Harbor? Like,
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, it was like during World War II. Yeah.
I always really liked kind of like a Timothy Mouse was looked out for Dumbo as sort of like a father figure of sorts, or like kind of like kind of like a guy looking out for him. And yeah, it's like just the fact that this poor elephant just gets put through so much, gets mocked like from birth, and his mother is just after she has to defend him, and like the whole like I love how defensive like Jumbo was of Dumbo. And I'll admit though, looking back, I always knew it wasn't going to be great, but looking back at it, the here's the thing. The Crows I'll forgive, man, because the Crows helped out, and I love with that old Timothy's like reading
The Crows to me are a little like I used to be able to look past them, but the older I get, the more I see the problem.
I mean, what saves the Crows? Look, I'm sure I don't know. What saves the Crows is that they really helped out at the end of the day, and like the fact that Timothy's like reading the riot act about the whole like shame on you, this poor kid, and they shed a genuine tear and like help the kid out. Like I don't know. I thought that bided back, and I don't know. Regardless, it's the fact that the Crows are smarter than them. I think kind of ultimately helped out. But regardless,
but the roustabouts absolutely like I honestly would not be angry if they just cut the roustabouts out of the Disney Plus version.
Now, by roustabouts, the guys are putting up the tent, right?
Yeah,
that's what exactly. So that's the thing.
We work all day, we get no pay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like looking back on that, just see them, putting up tents and everything. Yeah, lyrics of the song, kind of like the minute.
It's really like I don't think it's quite as bad as what made the Red Man red, but it's up there. It's up there.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like honestly, I'm thinking, oh yeah, the way I was thinking about it before I rewatched the clip was like, oh yeah, probably in shadow, maybe just people like maybe projecting onto it. And then I saw like, oh no, yeah, that's the lyrics are that's very clearly a group of black men, and then those lyrics are not. Yeah, those lyrics. I always thought it was like an implied sort of black thing. Like, nope, they're all black men. They're all like there was like a line essentially saying we can't read. That's where I drew the line.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not good. Oh, like that was where I was like, yeah, that doesn't hold. Yeah, okay. Everyone was misdirecting. To me, I still like everyone was misdirecting all that to the Crows glazing over this. Like this was the one to grieve about. Like, no, don't read into the Crows, folks. Look at the actual evidence in front of your face.
The Crows are problematic, but I hear you. This is worse.
I'm just saying it's like Crows are at least are characters. Like this is like okay, no, this is like very like it's kind of there. It's
like, hey kids, remember slaves?
It's like, hey, remember that?
Wasn't that a quaint thing?
It just feels like we're trying to gloss over. It's like, no, don't gloss over. It's right there. Look at that. But regardless, though, again, like when that elephant soars, man, you want to build a theme park right around it, and they did.
Right. Okay. So, Dragon, ironically enough, I did not plan it this way, but my next 4 entries are all princess movies. So strap in. Yeah, number 15 is Snow White. We don't really have to talk about this all that much more. I feel like you pretty much covered the basis. As far as like an overall fully fleshed out story, it doesn't have a lot going on, but I do like you can literally just like you said, Dragon, you can literally just feel like an art form being invented right before your eyes watching this thing, and that's what I think the coolest element is. And yeah, obviously the grumpy arc will never get old. I mean, they really did kind of craft a character arc for the ages with Grumpy. Snow White, another thing I do like is the villain side of things. I think that there's a lot of really memorable moments. Even the Huntsman, I think, is a pretty memorable sequence. And then
Yeah.
you've got the scary forest. You've got the hag transformation. I mean, there's a lot of really memorable villain stuff in this movie. I really think it very much set kind of like a high watermark for Disney villains going forward. So that is something I could definitely praise it for. And I love the atmosphere. I love how self-contained a lot of it is. Like it's basically just like, if you think about it, Dre, it's basically just like there's one castle and then a forest and the diamond mine and then the little cottage in the middle of the forest. And that's literally like the whole world of this movie. And I don't know, there's something fascinating about that to me. It's kind of like how when we visited ET, we were kind of geeking out about how ET makes a big adventure out of like a slither of suburbs and some woods. You know what I mean? So yeah, definitely you know a like a an evergreen classic for sure. It's a little dated. It kind of proved the foundation, and obviously a lot of the films going forward are going to have much stronger character work. But yeah, I mean it's a legend for a reason, and I frankly seeing some of the behind the scenes footage of the live action remake, I'm just like, why are we doing this? All right. You ever notice the circus and live action movies always have giraffes in them and use African elements alongside the Asian ones? That's never been true. I did not notice that, C&K, but that's a funny observation.
Hmm.
Okay, what's your number 15?
All right, number 15, Tangled.
Tangled. Okay, well, guess what, Dragon? My number 14 is Tangled.
Okay, well, I guess we'll tag team it then.
All right, we'll tag team it. Cool.
Yeah, so first computer animated Disney princess film. This is a big watershed moment, right?
hmm
Yeah, still maintained the 2D kind of a 2D Glen Keane charm, one might say, and the animation looked great. And again, I think it was like a great first, like this is kind of what it would look like. And it's like, okay, yeah, this is very much kind of in keeping. I don't know if anyone was like in fear or anything of like, and we digitized the Disney princess. What is the world coming to? But it was like, yeah, it was kind of it was a nice transition. It was a good. I think it helped that it was a good movie, versus like Chicken Little.
So Tangled is interesting because when it came out, I was in college. So it was like one of those rare, one of two rare times that I wasn't really paying all that much attention to Disney movies. So I never saw it on the big screen. I only saw it once the year after it came out before revisiting it. But yeah, I gotta say, revisiting it, man, this really blew me away. Like this has a ton of substance to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember I saw this on vacation once.
Oh,
That's why that's
nice.
the first time I watched it. Regardless, it was yeah. It's here's the thing. I mean, they took they adapted the big wig that is Rapunzel of all the fairy tale stories you have left to tell, and they and again, I think yet again Disney did what they do best, at least in their heyday. It was like, okay, we're going to give you the definitive version of the story. Rapunzel, quite a boring tale, ordinarily. We've really spiced it up, and we've given it, like made it the best version of that story we could tell. We populated with really good characters, like Flynn Rider, for example, played by the wonderful Zach Levi, who's hilarious, and he's very much the charmer. And of course, we have Maximus, and the very
Maximus steals the damn show, dude.
yep, get that man a horse.
One of the best Disney horses, if not the best, I would
Oh
say.
yeah. Now there's an interesting list for you.
Yeah, there is. Or animal sidekicks, just in general. I would feel like even in general animal sidekicks, he ranks pretty high.
It'd be darkly hilarious.
Huh.
Someone did like kind of like a short film somehow of the like an animated short film of the horse characters like auditioning for The Godfather.
Oh God. Oh no. Oh God.
Now, I like to think it's more like just like a plaster cast sort of thing, but then
Yeah,
again, if
yeah,
you like
yeah.
take it the dark direction, it's like, hey, they're all auditioning for
But
the
what if
roles.
they don't know Dragon? What if they
I
think
know.
they're getting their big break and instead they're being led to the slaughter?
That's the thing though. Imagine if it was just like a cruel thing of like they but like
Rescue
the
Rangers
lucky
2 writers take
just
notes.
like the luck basically the lucky winner is gonna be cast in the thing and they have like their first day of shooting is just gonna be like it's almost like a waiting for Godot thing or like a like a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern or what have you in which it's like they're actually I think it is waiting for Godot. The point being is like they're waiting the whole time like oh I hope I get the part not knowing their part will be
Oh
not
man.
not in.
All right.
Anyway, so art house approaches aside, yeah. So I just, of course, I love the I got a dream seat that the I got a dream song, with Brad Garrett and company as the hook-handed man playing the piano, and it's like the bar of the tough guys and how that pays off. Them saving their bacon with frying pans. The frying pan running gag is my favorite, by the way.
I love the frying pan. I love Rapunzel as a main character. I think she's easily the most relatable Disney princess. I think she goes through some of the most real life trauma with her mother gaslighting the hell out of her whole life.
Mother Gothel, kind of a return to. I mean, she's kind of cut from the same cloth as Lady Tremaine. I love it.
In my opinion, Mother Gothel is the last great Disney villain. Like,
At
hands
least,
down.
at least the last traditional Disney villain for sure. Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
I think she owns the movie to a certain extent. I mean, she is so evil, but she's a real world kind of
There's a
evil.
lot of Bette Midler in her. I know it's not Bette Midler doing the voice, but there's kind of like a lot of that going on with like kind of the vibe for her.
Uh-huh.
Because Bette Midler, she like owns the stage, man, when she comes on there. So
Yeah, and like I said, it's like it's not like a Maleficent style thing of like, oh, you snubbed me at a party. It's no, it's like this bitch is twisted.
I mean,
Uh,
ultimately,
yeah.
I was gonna say ultimately, Tangle just checks all the right boxes, man. And the only issue is that it kind of gets outshined by everything else. It's in kind of the 14 to 11 spot, if you will.
And I see the light needs to get translated into a theme park scene at some point, Dragon. It's too good not to be.
That'd be nice, yeah. Honestly, the
I
whole
mean,
like they could do like a
goddamn.
theme. They could do like a whole theme thing with the Disney castle and do like the Sun Lantern thing.
That'd be cool too.
Yeah.
I've seen like super long lines of people just waiting to take pictures, like as a couple with holding the single lantern.
Have they ever done like at Disney like at night? Would they do like the thing where they light the lanterns at night?
No, I don't think so. Not a big one.
That
No.
would be really nice if they did that.
I know. I know.
Because I mean, Disney has water like around the castle, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they could absolutely do that.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Anything else here?
I mean, again, look, we can glow about how kind of cool Tangled is, and the fact that again, like we have like a legitimate love story, and like we addressed the fact that it wasn't like that didn't instantly marry him or anything. He's like after a number of proposals, she said yes. I said
Uh-huh.
yes. Well, I said yes, and she said yes. Anyway, so I know it's real Tangled. Tangled just again, Tangled's hard to beat, man. You're absolutely right. It does hold up.
So Z and
tremendously
K,
well.
interesting thing about Small World. I absolutely would riot if they ever got rid of Small World at Disneyland. But Small World at Disney World, you know what? It's definitely the inferior version. I would not mind it going away for a big dark ride because it does have a pretty big footprint to it. So I would not, I think that would be a good location. Especially because it's right next to the Tangled bathrooms too. So that would actually be a solid location for a Tangled ride.
I'm going to propose this. Not exactly a ride, but you kind of like a little spot, at Disney, Rapunzel's salon.
Well, I mean, they have the Bippity Boppity Boutique, which is
Oh,
pretty much the same idea.
oh. Well, never mind then.
All right.
Okay, well, let's see. That was your 14, right?
Yeah, that was my 14. So
Okay.
what is your number 14?
All right. My number 14 is, after a lot of deliberations, Treasure Planet.
Okay, this is the one that shocked me, dude. I
Really?
was, my jaw kind of dropped when I saw this wasn't on your top 10.
Well, I mean, I don't want to give anything away. Let me do it this way. Tiki, don't worry. Treasure Planet was never going to make the top. Was never going to make the top 10. I know that much.
Really?
No, no, no. Treasure Planet. Look, I love Treasure. That's the thing.
Wow.
It was always going to make the top 20. It's just I originally had Treasure Planet higher on the list though, but I did kind of it did kind of get pushed back a little bit, but it was never going
Uh-huh.
to be in the top 10. A different pick on this was going to be in the top 10, but yeah, anyway. So Treasure Planet again, like probably the most interesting sci-fi version of this story of the Treasure Island story. I mean, I know it's not a whole lot of competition there, but it's like just such a great idea, like to spice that story up. You know, like well, we've seen it done with Muppets, which is like okay, that's the best way you could probably spice it up. How can we take it a step further? Well, let's take it into space. You know, let's take the Peter Pan concept of like a floating pirate ship, but let's go actually in space with it instead of like floating by the stars.
Mhm.
Like you know, like I don't know, it's just a really the movie has just tremendous design work about it. It has a great cast. I mean Emma Thompson and especially David Hyde Pierce. He's so good in the movie.
He is. He
You got
is.
David I. Pierce, of course. The core of the movie. Obviously, you have Jim Hawkins and John Silver, which is perfect. That's the bit you have, the beats that you have to hit in that story, or else the story springs a leak and it's going to sink.
And they knocked that story over the head. It's such a good arc.
Yes, they did. And obviously, John Silver looks awesome as a cyborg. Just
Oh yeah.
the gadget nut in me. Oh, look at his hand! It's so
So I
cool.
genuinely think this is maybe one of the best designed, not just Disney films, but just animated films, period, that I've ever seen.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
From the characters to the backdrops to the ships.
I mean, the only nitpick here's the thing: the only persistent nitpick I have with Treasure Planet has always been the music choices during the montages never really thrilled me. It felt very to me that felt really dated. Like this is very 2000s. Like let's play the rock music. During our well not kind of playing like kind of the 2000s music
Mhm.
during the montage. It felt like it's kind of something Disney did not really
You know
didn't
what's funny is
offer.
that that never really bothered me with the 2000s era Disney movies, just because I grew up in that kind of era, and so that music just kind of like I am very nostalgic for that style of music.
I mean, I can understand that, especially like looking back on it now. But like then still looking back, and it always just feels now it's commonplace, mind you. But I'm just saying, like then, like Bolt has like kind of more modern songs playing. It's like in
Mhm.
'06, but like or '07. I think it's '06. Regardless, it probably was. At the point you go back, and I don't know, it's just like this is like one of the first times they kind of pulled that sort of trick. I mean, I think this came out before Brother Bear, so
No, this didn't. Oh yeah, it did. It did. Yeah, yeah.
pretty sure, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. That always kind of stuck out to me, and I can't remember if we did it like just one big sequence in which we had him and John Silver, kind of him mentoring him, and
Okay,
then
to be fair, I
he.
mean, for me personally, I honestly really love that montage, and I think the
I
song
know I
fits really
love.
well.
I mean, I do love the montage though. If I were, can you remind me? Is it like is it just the one montage in which it's like him helping him out, and then he's thinking back to his father? Or is that too
Yeah,
much?
that's the only one I can think of.
Okay, I guess that's what I don't know. Maybe it's like it goes on longer than me. I don't know. It just always kind of was a little jarring to me, and also I don't mind Martin Short in his role. I do ordinarily like Martin Short. I'm saying I do understand a lot of people do have kind of like Martin Short's going to be a make or break for that movie for a lot of people. I'm sure of like we have the annoying sidekick who's very much like the MacGuffin. He's very important
I didn't
to how
mind
the
him
map.
just because, like, I'm familiar with the Ben Gunn character, and he's pretty much that.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I thought it was a good take on if we're gonna do that, we're gonna do the
Yeah.
character. What did we do with Ben? Do you remember what we did with Ben Gunn in Muppet Treasure Island?
Oh God. Wasn't that Piggy?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I knew she didn't she like lead like the tribe,
I
but
think
like
wasn't her name like Benjamina Gunn or something like that?
I guess that's right. Yeah, it's probably.
Hold on, I'm looking it up really quick.
Yeah, I think that's anyway.
I'm
So
pretty sure that's it.
the point being, Treasure Planet aesthetically is amazing, and it's just I mean compared to some of the other ones, I don't know. It's just like I'm loving the world building on Treasure Planet. I do love like the core story we're adapting. I don't know. It's just like
Yeah,
some of
Miss
the others.
Piggy was Benjamina Gunn.
There you go. So ultimately, look, I mean, Treasure Planet's it's just great. It just I don't know. It's like it just doesn't quite call to me like some of the other ones does. It's not really a good reason why Treasure Planet isn't higher, but I don't know. Maybe it's because it's like a number of Disney films. The ones that really thrilled me are the ones that, like a lot of the ones you'll be seeing on the top 10 list, for example, are going to be the ones that kind of cut against the Disney grain, because I do respect and I do love those.
This I would say this cuts against the Disney
I
grain quite a bit.
yes,
Sorry.
what I was getting at, thank you, is that yes, and while that is the case, I mean, I do love how this cuts against the Disney grain. I don't know, like a few more that I kind of had to put some of the traditional ones up like above it, and I don't know, it was kind of like a weird. It kind of fell into a weird place in the listing. Like, this is why I hate lists, because now I feel guilty.
No, don't feel guilty. It's all good.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So my number 13, once again, just to continue on the princess theme, we're going to do The Little Mermaid. And I was going back and forth between The Little Mermaid and Tangled. Honestly, I think Tangled I like just a little bit more. I certainly like the character of Rapunzel more than I like Ariel. But Little Mermaid just has so much historical value going for it that I had to give it the edge. I mean, obviously it kickstarted the Renaissance. I love how much emotional backbone there is in just the genesis of this thing with the Howard Ashman side of things, of course, Part of Your World. And I mean, I just think the soundtrack in general is just one of the great Disney soundtracks, period. Under the Sea, come on. Sebastian is one of the all-time great comic relief characters in a Disney movie. Ursula is just an amazing presence, an amazing villain. I actually think that Prince Eric has, like, he's not great, but I think he has more personality than, at the very least, the princes of the Walt era. He was a decent step up. And the animation is just pretty mind-blowing, especially for the time. And I still think it holds up. The scale of things, how ambitious it was. This movie's kind of been talked about to death. I don't really have all that much to add. Is it a movie that I go back and rewatch a lot? No, not really. But, I can certainly, I give it all the respect in the world for essentially saving the studio, because if it weren't for this movie, I don't know what would happen. I mean, this movie was just kind of like the genesis that kind of sprang to everything afterwards. I mean, in a weird way, Dragon, this movie is kind of like Disney's second Snow White. On that level, I just have to give it the respect and the props. I do think that Ariel is probably the weakest character in the movie, which is a bit problematic. But I also think that all the other characters in the movie are very strong. So, so that kind of evens itself out a bit. That's about all I have to say. It's, just obviously a big old landmark movie. Not necessarily the most emotionally invested that I am in a Disney movie, but I certainly do have a lot of emotional investment in it just based on the Howard Ashman parts. So, yeah. Then Z and K, I believe he said last week he was a huge Little Mermaid fan, and he's kind of upset that it made neither of our top 10s. Sorry, Z and K.
Oh, it was never going to make my top 10, friend. I'm sorry.
Dragon, what's your number 13?
Wreck-It Ralph.
Wreck-It Ralph. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, this was this is the movie that had me from the trailer, man. I had a lot of love for Wreck-It Ralph from the jump, and it did live up to the expectations. In which it's a gold premise. It's a gold premise that's rooted in a logical logic, which is my wheelhouse. Basically, it's Toy Story for the arcade, one could say. In terms of like the thought process, well, this would happen if these characters were someone we were able to follow. Like what are video game characters doing when the lights go out at the arcade? What's going on behind the screen? This would happen, especially if they could be connected by a surge protector and interact. So, just the idea that the bad guy isn't so bad, and he's kind of having this existential crisis in kind of like a Bad Guys Anonymous, meeting. And which leads to this fun adventure. I mean, I love that. I love the fundamental questions it brings up. Like, can we challenge our programming? And ultimately, the answer in the movie is, quite interestingly, the answer is, I think a lot of therapy you probably find is or like kind of a group therapy session of some sort, perhaps, is that it's that you can't change it. It's the fact that you have to live. Basically, it's acceptance. Ultimately, is what I'm getting at here. It's acceptance that you life is unfair, and you kind of have to live the unfair life and make it work on your terms. You have to find a way to accept it and make it work for you. Ultimately, is kind of the lesson there. Where Ralph is not able to be the good guy. He's not able to be ultimately, he is a good guy, does something heroic, but we can't really celebrate him that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's his role, and obviously it kind of breaks the status quo, and the whole thing will go belly up. As we kind of tease, like, if he leaves his game, the game gets shut down. Everyone else is going to suffer. So, great characterization, a lot of great characters, particularly Ralph himself. Also, Calhoun and Felix. I still got a lot of love for Calhoun and everything. Jane Lynch did in that role. Yeah, I mean, of course, Alan Tudyk. I love me some Alan Tudyk, and Alan Tudyk. I was so instantly sold as Alan Tudyk. I love when people do Ed Wynn impressions. So Alan Tudyk as Ed Wynn for this King Candy character was already delightful to me. And then we had like the big villain reveal, like, oh my god, he's he's Turbo, and not only is he Turbo, he's like this giant monstrosity. Like, that fight was amazing between Ralph and the giant King Candy monster. I guess a boss battle.
Oh,
That was a lot of fun. So I can't really argue against like the whole. Yeah, we all expect a little bit more, but because the world building potential is numerous, but we did get a sample of it in the sequel, and they took a calculated risk of, okay, we don't want to go blind by going to every game along the way, and basically have to make the movie longer, which is not always an option in animation. And it's like, okay, so we gotta. Let's take a calculated risk and keep this character centric, and ultimately it is in service of it being a great character piece between him and Vanellope and everything. So you only really need like 2 locations ultimately, and the bar, which is great because I too love that tapper scene so much.
Hell
My
yeah.
favorite bit. I love it's animated kind of like a cutscene. I love that. It's great.
All right.
So yeah.
Cool. All right, Dragon. The next 2, I got to tell you, this is where the pedal really hit the metal. And like the next 2 on my list, you're going to be really upset at number 11. You're going to be really upset at what did not make the top 10, but I guarantee you it was a hard call. But this was also a hard call because I returned to this after many years. I watched it as a kid, but I didn't really think about it as an adult. After many years, I returned to it. It kind of blew me away. Number 12 is Cinderella. Cinderella was easily one of the movies on the rewatch that just exceeded every expectation I had for it. First of all, you can really feel the influence of Mary Blair in this film, and this honestly is it's the most understated Mary Blair color palette, but it also might be my favorite just for like how I don't know, Drake. There's a very like what I love about the color palette in this movie is that unlike something like Peter Pan or Alice in Wonderland or Three Cabs, where it's very surrealistic, this kind of has like a real world sort of beauty to it that you don't often see with Mary Blair's work, and that really transcends with me. Also, I mean, Lady Tremaine just like straight up, she's competing with Frollo for like the most malicious and evil villain in the Disney canon, just straight up. I mean, like, I feel like she's the type of character where as a kid you're scared of her, but as an adult you just like seethingly hate her because you can see the kind of the real world influence. I mean, she's easily one of the most realistic Disney villains as far as like you could totally imagine a scenario going down like this with if a woman who does act like this, it's I mean, it is genuinely kind of scary how much she gaslights Cinderella and just makes Cinderella's life a living hell. I do think that the mouse stuff is a little long in the tooth. I will agree with that for sure. I did really like the Cinderella song as a kid. Now I'm just like, get rid of it. It doesn't need to be there. But you know what? That's my only real nitpick with it. I think I think the romance stuff is good enough. I feel like they do a good job emphasizing like, falling in love with the prince. Because what I like about the prince in this movie as opposed to Snow White is that at the very least, him and Cinderella, they do have a deep conversation with each other. Like, it's still kind of falling in love with someone overnight. But with the prince and Snow White, it was literally just like they see each other and they fall in love like instantly. There's barely even any like interaction that goes on. It's like at least here we get a sense of their chemistry, and I think that adds a lot. So yeah, I Cinderella, of course, is also kind of like another Snow White style movie for Disney, where it got them out of the dark ages of doing the package films and kind of revitalized the studio financially. So it's a very important movie in that respect as well. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just like with all the other Cinderella stories that have come out and been adapted, it's just like one of those things where it's just kind of crazy how many non-Disney versions of Cinderella there are. I still think this is like without a doubt the definitive Cinderella movie, like no question. I think it really stands toe to toe with some of Disney's all-time best fairy tale films. I do love it quite a lot. And I think the fact that it didn't get into the top 10 is really just kind of a testament to the competition at this point. It's not a knock against the film at all. All right, almost done, folks. Let me read some comments here. I mean, I know Gene's an extreme minor character, but considering he did tempt Ralph to go to Turbo in the first place, it still felt a bit cold. Maybe I'm overthinking that.
No. I had like the major Gene hatred when I was watching like Wreck-It Ralph. I was like on Ralph, so like F you, Gene. Like, come on, man. You in the first place. How dare you?
I do like how bleached Mary's colors are for Sydney. They're more subdued. Yeah, bleach is a good word for sure. The mice scene, I think, was the biggest no big cut of loss. It was the entire breakfast scene in the pantry. Yeah, that too. My favorite's the 1997-2013 Broadway revival of Roger and Hammerstein's take. What's interesting is that I almost did see Roger and Hammerstein's Cinderella not on Broadway, but my local community theater was doing a production of it. I just didn't get around to it. But I don't know. From what I can tell, from what I've seen of the Roger and Hammerstein Cinderella, I'm just not a big fan of the songs in that one. But yeah. Okay, Dragon. What is your number 12?
My number 12 is much deliberation. It's Frozen.
Okay.
Yeah, so honestly, number 12, number 11, or at many points, like they made it onto the top 10, and they kept.
Yeah, same here. Same with me, honestly.
Yeah, so with Frozen, ultimately, I adore the first Frozen movie. I mean, like ironically, it relit the fire for Disney, despite being very ice themed. At the end of the day, with the first Frozen in particular, I appreciate the simplicity of it, and that we went back to basics, but knowing what we know now, which is like one of those once in a lifetime opportunities you get of like let's take it back to the beginning. We're kind of in a place now. Tangled really opened some doors for us, and we have CG at our disposal for tell the print. If I recall, wasn't it like Tangled? Then they did the Winnie the Pooh thing. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like okay, let's see where we can go with this, and. We kind of brought it back to the building blocks. So let's take a fairy tale. Let's take the Snow Queen, something Walt kind of flirted with doing something with back in the day. We kind of got shelved. And again, let's take it and just kind of see, maybe we can kind of subvert some things and kind of add like a new kind of flavor to it. And we made a story about sisters. Like, okay, well, what worked really well in Lilo and Stitch? Well, the sister things. Maybe let's bring a little bit of that.
You're damn right. It worked really well in Lilo.
I know that's what I'm saying. So they're this is what I'm saying, Tiki. They've learned. This
I am proud of you for putting Lilo and Stitch above this. By the way,
right.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My point is, I like that we're kind of we're taking what we've learned over how many years in the Disney camp we had at this point, and we're kind of like, let's take what's the things that have worked really well for us, and let's reconfigure them, and let's kind of take this story that we haven't done before in the way that we would have approached it. So we kind of have knowledge on our side here. We have the ice powers metaphor essentially being kind of the ostracization, like a Dumbo with the ears or something, only a little bit more kind of icy and kind of power related. Yeah, I just really, the movies always stood out to me. Aesthetically, it looked great. Ice is really cool power, literally. I love the design of our characters. I really, Olaf. The Olaf was the big determining factor in which Olaf, again, he could have tanked the movie hard.
Oh,
Like a
he
lot of people
absolutely
thought.
could have. I remember everyone hated that teaser trailer.
That's what I'm saying. The teaser is the most fascinating thing about Frozen. Like, what on earth possessed them to put that teaser
That
out?
teaser trailer is genuinely awful.
Well, no, it's not awful, Tiki. It's just it is not right for your
It does not sell the movie, is what I
yeah.
mean.
It's
It's
as
awful
a
at selling the movie.
that's the thing. It's a fun short film, but it is not a
Yeah,
trailer. But it's like
exactly.
this is the movie you're gonna see. So like whoever was in the marketing department that day should have gotten their pay docked.
And then meanwhile, Frozen 2, the trailer starts with the wave thing, and it's like, okay, they got it right that time.
Yeah, that's them learning their lesson.
Right.
So that's the thing. So I mean, ultimately, Olaf again. I ended up really liking Olaf, and again, like he could have easily just kind of tanked the film, but he didn't. I let's see sorry, yeah. I mean, honestly, I love the music in Frozen. Obviously, the biggest ones being honestly, I just think it's got a lot of really good ones. Obviously, the outside of Let It Go, you have I always loved the God, I'm trying to remember the name of the first song. The For the First Time in Forever. I love that one. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
for First Time in Forever, and also Love is an Open Door. I mean, if you're gonna again, Love is an Open Door. What's really fascinating about it is it's kind of like it's playing into the expectation of the audience of like, okay, they're gonna fall head over heels with each other in one night. So we're gonna give them like a really good song that's indicative of that. But then we're gonna take the right turn. Like, no, this movie isn't gonna be about that.
Sure.
Yeah, and the ultimate, I'll admit the troll song. That's kind of it's the troll song is not great, but it's.
I honestly think the troll song is worse than a guy like you.
I really like a guy like you, though. It's
Yeah,
okay. The point being, the troll song is not great, but I mean, by comparison, it's more like it's fine. It's like we don't need it. And it's like it's out of nowhere is the problem. It's like, well, do we really need a song like right now about this? But compared to like a lot of other Disney things, we're
and the
just kind of
fact
like
that
throwing
it's
it in there.
literally the only song in the movie's second half, that's a big problem for me.
But and again, I do like I do kind of respect the choice. So again, we're kind of tempering back the music as things are getting a little bit more involved. It's like we kind of had all of our we had our reprises in Act Two, and then we're kind of getting out of that. And I'll admit it's a rockier transition with the trolls. Rock anyway. So it's a rockier transition with the trolls. Like dude, we need to meet the trolls, but introducing characters traditionally we do it with a song. I think that was the logic, but anyway. So just look, ultimately,
DK says there's just something about rock-based Disney characters where their songs bite. Yeah, it is kind of a weird trend.
it's not really a Disney reference, but I think that might be a rock biter kind of reference in that somewhere. Anyway, so ultimately, I love how we visualize Elsa's emotional state. By the way, too, because it has leads some really the idea she has a storm inside of her, and that's why we're having like the big snowstorm that's hitting Arendelle, like that blizzard scene, and just the big title sake of the movie when
Uh-huh.
when Anna gets frozen. I mean, just that again is just beautifully just kind of visualized there, and is everything on display and just perfectly. So Frozen is just a very well told, very tight knit story that I marveled at tremendously in the day it premiered, and I still look back to it fondly. Like, if it's on, I'll watch a few minutes of Frozen, man. I rather enjoy it.
Cool. Okay, Dragon, we're gonna play a little guessing game here. I want you to guess like which movie that I really like that has not been on my list yet did not make the top 10.
All right. Well, I know it's not going to be. I know Lilo and Stitch is going to be there.
Obviously, Lilo and Stitch is in my top 10. Yeah,
Yeah,
fair to say Lilo and Stitch is in my top 5.
I mean, there's no way you put Emperor's New Groove on, on here.
No, Emperor's New Groove is that's safe.
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. Gonna rip off the Band-Aid. It's Hunchback! Hunchback! You're not quite as shocked as I thought you'd be. I thought that'd get like an audible gasp.
No, it's there. I'm just not.
Okay. Yeah, this was a really tough call. I really do think when we do these top 20 lists, Dragon, number 11 is probably like the hardest one historically to place because it's
Yeah,
like,
but
oh
really, you
god,
mean
you
to tell
know.
me you had a 10 that necessitated above Hunchback, though?
Well, if you want to know, my number 10's The
Well, don't
Lion
tell.
King.
And he's going to tell me his number. Great.
But that's just because I have a lot of sentimental value attached to that movie. It's literally the first movie I saw in theaters, so you know, it is what it is.
All right.
But yeah, Hunchback, here's the thing. I think that pretty much when we get into my top 10, I think literally every film in that top 10 is perfect for all intents and purposes. Lion King, there's certainly things I can nitpick, but there's less things I can nitpick than in Hunchback. Hunchback, frankly, I think, we all know what's great about it. The tone, the epic quality, the great villain, the rich thematic elements. But Dragon, ultimately, I think the thing that weighed it down, unfortunately, is kind of the gargoyles. I know I'm just kind of like preaching to the choir here, but Dragon, if they would have stuck to their guns with the gargoyles and just had them be literal figments of Quasi's imagination and nothing else, and if they just had not interacted with the townspeople, and if they weren't involved in like stupid slapstick bullshit in the climax when there's literal molten lead bleeding down the side of Notre Dame, I think I would have overall appreciated them a lot more. I will say this: Laverne and Victor, I have no problems with. I actually really love Victor a lot. I love his design. I love how he's kind of like the stoic father figure of the group. And Laverne is kind of like the right kind of sassy for me, right? Like she's kind of like the right kind of comic relief. Hugo, Mr. Jason Alexander over here, pour the wine and cut the cheese. Fart, fart, fart. The movie would be better off with him not in it, Dragon, frankly. I mean, it's like literally every line, every moment with Hugo, the whole thing where they're during the Heaven's Light scene where they're drawing the pictures of Esmeralda and he draws the picture of the goat. He's like, yeah. It's like, oh my god, Dragon Hugo is just like, he's like a sniper for the tone of this movie, Dragon. I mean, it's like absolutely, like I truly think if it was just Laverne and Victor, I would not have a problem with the gargoyles at all. They would be totally fine. Even if the Guy Like You song is still in there, they'd be totally fine. Hugo really is the element of this movie that does. It's still a masterpiece, but I can't, in all honesty, put it in my top 10 because, like I said, everything else is pretty much perfect, if not borderline perfect. And there very much is that one problematic element that I do very much wish could be cut out. I mean, other than that, it's like we could talk blue in the face about how awesome this movie is in every other area, but a problematic element is a problematic element. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what locked this out of the top 10, I hate to say. So yeah, there it is. Is there any validity to the Hugo thing?
I mean, the funny idea of this, I know what a Robot Chicken approach to this would be, though. It would be during the climax, I'm going to say, like, during the climax, Quasimodo, like, chucks, like, after he makes, like, a cut the cheese joke or something, he chucks him at, like, Frollo or something, and it's like, he breaks. That would be...
if they framed that as, like, the gargoyle's death scene.
That's what I'm saying, though. I mean, it'd be like, I'm only visually kind of like the funny version of it, but it'd be, yeah. But here's the thing, though. I love Jason Alexander. I do kind of agree with Z and K here. Jason.
Yeah, I'm not going to poo-poo Jason Alexander. Generally speaking, Jason Alexander's voice work is great. I mean, look at something like Duckman.
Look, Hugo does feel like a mandated, like, 90s thing for sure. He does, which obviously does kind of make the whole tone sniper thing. Yeah, it's a little.
Whereas Victor and Laverne feel like they could fit into the time period.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Now, that said, though, I don't necessarily. I'll admit, looking back on the jokes, it's like, yeah, it does kind of It's going to take away a little bit, but I don't think as
Oh,
much.
and also they have some inappropriate slapstick in certain scenes too that I wasn't really crazy about.
Well, I mean, the problem with the slapstick is that again it takes away from the whole like, he's imagining them idea. That's the problem with the slapstick.
Well, that and it also like even the slapstick that doesn't directly involve the gargoyles, I feel just takes away from the dramatic tone.
Right. I don't know. That's the thing. So I mean, yeah, the gargoyles there is kind of like a frustrating thing, but I don't think it's nothing necessarily kills the movie or necessarily
No, I don't
kills
think it
the
kills the
film.
movie at all. Like I said, it's just the excuse I have that it's not in my top 10.
Oh, sure, but yeah, yeah. I'm just saying, like, I think the other movies have had more. Well, yeah, that's why they're lower on the list, though. So the other movies have had substantial
Uh,
problems. It's more like one bum
ZK
gargoyle.
says ZK says Laverne and Victor could have been a married couple. That would have been a sweet bit. Yeah, that would totally been great. There's something about Quasi story that really hits home for me.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely, and I think the best element of this film, just hands down, is kind of like the way that they're bold enough to show how tragic of a story Quasi has, and I love how bittersweet the ending of the movie is. Dragon, it is uplifting. Certainly, it is uplifting, but there is that element of like, well, he didn't. It's kind of like he got what he needed, but not what he wanted. You know
it's
what I
the
mean?
first time they didn't have the relationship happen. They didn't have like
Right,
the guy get
right.
the girl, and well, usually the princess.
But
Gets the guy.
I also really like how how him and Phoebus kind of start out as romantic rivals, and then by the end of the movie, Phoebus has earned his respect.
Yeah.
All right.
Also,
Do any
Kevin
of the
Kline.
movies rank above Hunchback involve avian creatures? Because that means it's losing to a
Yeah,
bird.
you got to admit that's like the
That's
best line
clever,
that he.
Monkey. That's clever.
You got to admit that is like the best line he has in that movie, though.
It is. It is. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
a good. That was a good. So that's what I'm saying. If the lines were more like that from him, I think he would have played better. But yeah, when it's like
literally when his first line is pour the wine and cut the cheese.
I mean, look, that's
I wouldn't even mind that line if it weren't for the fart sound effects.
I know, right? The whole yeah. I mean, the goat. How do you and the goat thing? Like, let me put it this way: would you take the goat thing over the cut the cheese thing, or would you take the cut cheese thing over the goat runner?
Oh man, I mean, I don't like either of them, but I'd honestly probably take the cut the cheese thing because the goat thing is just like kind of like low key creepy, and it's in more of the movie.
I mean, what does help the fact that we see him just making like the armpit fart sound. It's not like he's
No, sure.
As I'm saying,
He's not physically farting. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. I think that honestly, that to me is why that bit never truly bothered me because it's just making like honestly, when you do it, the armpit fart is funnier than the actual act itself. I think half the time because especially like, look at Country Bears.
I would agree to that. Yeah.
I'm saying look at Country Bears and the whole like the Christopher Walken's big thing is armpit farting. That was his big talent. That's funny.
All right, and that's the only time that we're ever going to throw praise to that movie.
Really?
I am not. I am not a fan of that movie. Are you?
Oh, well, I'm not a fan. Look, I'm not like
we haven't had this conversation.
I mean, I'm just saying there are like a few bits in the Country Bears.
I mean, I like the fact that Jim Henson worked on it, but as a movie, it does not come together well.
All right. I don't disagree. I'm saying I like a few minor bits in that movie, and Christopher Walken is one of them.
Well, yeah, Christopher Walken, sure, just his delight at destroying the model, but anyways.
Walken, if I recall, Brad Garrett playing one of the bears, he had one of the best scenes in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Dragon, you're number 11. What did not make the cut?
Okay, so originally this was like number 10 on my list. And then I was debating putting Frozen there, and then I realized like, no, I should keep Frozen there. And this is the thing, I just kept going back and forth whether this was like, because I had like a number of the going against the grain movies for the at least the way I view them, like some of them that are going against the grain for the top 10. So this one I figured, maybe it's one too many. Atlantis: The Lost Empire.
Yeah, so this was my number 30, so it's significantly higher for you.
And ultimately, that's why Treasure Planet was never in contention, because I know because originally like Treasure Planet was like number 12, and then Atlantis was number 11, because I knew like I love those two films, but it's like I don't want to put them like they're a little similar in kind of what they were, how against the grain they were at the time, and it would have been like just two in a row, really. So So the point is, I kind of spaced them out because at the end of the day, I'm always going to choose Atlantis over Treasure Planet. As great as Treasure Planet is, I don't know, Atlantis for me. You got
For
Trousdale.
me, I'd always choose Treasure Planet over Atlantis, but subjectivity and
Oh
whatnot.
no, I mean they're both good. I'm saying they're in great company. It's just for me, it's
I
Atlantis.
just think Treasure Planet obviously nails its villains a lot better. I think that's the thing it obviously has going over Atlantis.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. It's for me though. Atlantis, again, so you have the Trousdale and Kirkwise on it. Of course, the classic duo doing something really different. These guys had kind of cut against the grain.
Are
And
you
kind of
calling Ron and John not a classic
No,
duo?
I'm not.
I'm sorry, Dragon. I'm fucking with you. I'm sorry.
Anyway, but point being, I love I love the duo, and I love the fact that they've kind of gone against the grain, kind of big ways in different capacities that really kind of changed the game at Disney. So they come back, they do Atlantis, and it's the fact to say, okay, we're taking a really unique. If you really think about it, there's this really interesting period where we're taking classic stories and giving them kind of a sci-fi edge of sorts. Where okay, we have Treasure Planet and Treasure Island in space. We have 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but kind of in a Mike Mignola style almost.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, for me though, the big reason I think ultimately I'm always going to pick Atlantis is that I adore Milo Thatch as a character. I love Michael J. Fox and what he did in this movie. I love that. I love how the friendships that he makes. I like Dr. Sweet, for example, with the kind of our band of motley characters. I mean, I think they stick out a little bit more than not that these guys are really full on characters, mind you, but they have all the crewmates on the ship in Treasure Planet who all turn bad. I don't think they stick out as much as maybe some of the Treasure Island characters because you recognize all of them. So there's an unfair advantage there. I don't know. It's again, there's so much I appreciate about this movie. Again, the Mignola design work of the giant lobster, kind of looking like labyrinthian, kind of Leviathan creature, and then of course just the Atlantean kind of design, the idea of Atlantis, sunk as it tends to do. We kind of start the movie off that way and just kind of build the mythology there and everything. And again, I'll admit, the hesitation I have, ultimately, if I look back on Atlantis, there's only one bit I don't like about Atlantis, really, because the villain turn thing, I mean, because they buy it back and you see Dr. Who's already uncomfortable with it. And again, it's the thing of we knew they were in it for money, and the sinister turn is oh no, not our friends, not the guys who said they were in it for money, but it's a good. I think it's a sobering lesson for kids that there was kind of a corrupting element to money, kids. It's
sure.
Things you're uncomfortable with, even if you like these characters. Trust is a thing you got to bear in mind. And ultimately, it's the fact that we see Dr. Sweet the moment that old guy got punched, the moment Kira's father, the king, got essentially got punched fatally. He was very not on board with this. Okay, this feels absolutely wrong. I'm not anyway. So I think they bought their way back on that one. Regardless, the bit what bothers me more than the villain turn thing or the big surprise thing was it still bothers me. I don't fully get the Atlantean lore in which okay, so Kira. Sorry, wait, what am I saying?
Yeah.
Kida, thank you. Sorry, Kida. Well, I still don't understand why when Kida goes down there and they see the heart of Atlantis. Essentially, she just kind of instinctively she walks there and she becomes a battery. Her becoming the battery plot line never worked for me because I don't get it.
Yeah, I hear you. That's kind of where the movie kind of lost me from a plot level rewatching it.
That was again. That's the important transition between Act 2 and 3, and it's again, it's the whole reason. It's she goes from a character to a MacGuffin. And I'm not
yes, totally.
And that's the thing.
She's a very strong character before that, so it's a bit of a shame.
And that's ultimately that was kind of the straw for well, if I really look at Atlantis.
Okay. I like that. That's the dividing point for you. I can see that.
That's the thing. Every time I watch Atlantis, I'm having such a great time with it, and then there's that battery thing again. But then we have a good climax.
We do have a good climax, yeah,
and a really nice ending where we have we have the little letter with the little the crystal, which is nice.
Oh, you know me. I live for. Yes, I live for that character. One of my favorite characters in the film, I think.
There's so much darn charm, and again, there's I don't know. That's the thing. It's the setting's unique. We don't always see the Disney films kind of set in the what was it, the
I think it's the 1700s. I could be wrong.
It's not the 1700s. That's still the 19th century. Tiki. It's just a question what I think it's 1917 or something.
Yeah, that could be right. Yeah, you're right. It's not the 1700s. I know what I'm talking about.
It's the 1910s.
There were vehicles.
It's we're in the we're in the 19s, if you will.
Yeah.
early 19. Point being, regardless, there's a lot of charm there in the fact there's like Disney movies can easily get away from the humanity if you don't keep them in check, and I like the fact that he's kind of brought a lot of that there. It's like, I don't know, it was really, I don't know, something special. I've always appreciated that. I loved it.
Okay. All right, folks. Well, that will do it. Big thanks to Monkey, Z&K, and Theme Park Priest for giving their thoughts. We will be back next week to list out our top 10, as well as in an additional podcast next week, we will be doing our long-awaited Lilo and Stitch 20th anniversary retrospective. So, yeah, look forward to that. Z&K, you put Lilo and Stitch outside the top 10. I see that. And Emperor's New Groove. He has Emperor's New Groove at number 18. Hang'em Dragon.
Heresy.
All right, I'm just kidding. And Sleeping Beauty at number 19, above Hunchback. That's kind of surprising.
He is no longer an elephant.
Oh, God. All right, folks. Have a good day. See you later. Oh, Grumpy, you do care.